Hello. Hello. Welcome to the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities. My name is Anissa Asaibi-George, and I am chairing in the place of Councilor Presley today this council meeting. I'm joined by Council President Michelle Wu. I'd like to remind you that this is a public hearing being recorded and will be rebroadcast on Comcast 8, RCN 82, Verizon 1964, as well as online. Please silence your cell phones and other devices. We would also like to take public testimony and would appreciate it if you would sign in and check the box to testify. Please state your name, affiliation, or residence, and limit your comments to a few minutes to ensure that all comments and concerns can be heard, and that's following the panel, of course. Today is Docket 0199, in order that the Committee on Healthy Women, Families, and Communities will continue to host a series of policy briefings related to key topics in early education and child care. Today's topic is transitions from early ed to kindergarten. I have a few opening comments. So this is the fourth in a series of policy briefings regarding Docket 1099, key topics in early education and this topic will be transitions from early ed to kindergarten. My name is Anissa Asaibi-George, and today I'll be chairing blah, blah, blah. You heard that already. Sorry, I'm way off here. Councillor Campbell, unfortunately, is unable to attend this hearing, and we would like to take this moment, Council President Wu did yesterday, but we'd like to take this opportunity to congratulate her on the birth of her son, and also congratulate, because it's the perfect opportunity and platform to also congratulate Michelle on the birth of her second son. Councilor Presley has a scheduling conflict and is unable to attend. We are going to get started today on a particular focus of transition from child care to kindergarten, a topic that is near to many of us, both as parents and as teachers, and understanding that the first day of school is so important and that we want to make sure that transitions from early ed and child care to BPS or other schools, but BPS in particular for today, that our kids are prepared for that arrival to the first day of school. And according to the Department of Early Ed and Care, the City of Boston has over 50 early education and care centers that have a wide range of programming and resources, that the transition from preschool to kindergarten is a long process and can be overwhelming for parents. In an ideal scenario, parents visit schools to do some research, make decisions, and then register their child for their school choice. But that isn't always how it goes. As we push toward universal pre-K, a very good goal, we need to push to make sure that the transition from pre-K to kindergarten is as smooth and successful for everyone, child, parent, community. My goal for today is to understand the process that BPS has in place and where there might be some opportunities for improvement and how we can create opportunities for BPS and child care and early ed centers to coordinate activities. So with that, I apologize for being all over the place. Councilor Wu, do you have any opening statements? No, dive in. All right, so we've got a great panel of experts for the Boston Public Schools with us today. I'd like to welcome Sonia Gomez. I'm looking for your name on here, Sonia. Oh, there it is, Gomez Bainry, Jason Sachs, and Tiara Dias, and I'll let them do their opening comments and talk about their work. Thank you.
Great. So what we're going to do is we actually have written testimony that we're going to read.
Perfect. That's
but
perfect.
then when we're done with that,
I hope you do a better job of reading your opening comments.
That's why we're reading.
Than I do. I had blah 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 in there somehow. And anyway.
But you can either interrupt us, or at the end of it, then we'll just answer any questions. And hearing what you've sort of framed, we might miss some of the marks, so I just want to make sure that we address whatever it is you're interested in.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Okay, so as stated, I'm Jason Sachs, so now let me just read this. And it's to Chairwoman Presley, but that's okay, to you too. And the Committee on Healthy Women, Family, and Communities. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today. My name is Jason Sachs, and I'm the Executive Director of Early Childhood for the Boston Public Schools. And I'm here today to discuss transitions from early education and kindergarten in the city of Boston. First, some background. In 2005, Mayor Menino launched pre-K in Boston Public Schools to serve 4-year-old children in the Boston Public Schools, and the Department of Early Childhood was formed to support this initiative. Our first 2005 BPS served about 750 4-year-olds, which we call K-1 students, and today we serve over 2,800 K-1 students. For context, BP enrolls about 4,500 kindergarten students, so K-2 students each year. So you can see we are about a little more than 50% of the students are in K-1. Roughly between 5 and 10% are not using any formal program. So back to your transitions conversation, if they're not in the Boston Public Schools at age 4, they are most likely in community-based programs, Head Starts, or family childcare. And my guess is that there's probably a lot more than 50 programs. There's probably something like 200 centers and Head Starts combined, and about 500 to 700 family childcare providers, to give you sort of the sense of the world. Okay, of the pre-K providers in Boston that are not in the public schools, most student attend standalone community-based organizations. Head Start make the second largest contingent, followed by parochial, charter, and larger CBOs. Given the large number of students transitioning into the Boston Public Schools from kindergarten, we have worked with various organizations in the city of Boston on transition strategies. First and foremost, we honor families as children's first teachers. Our curricula for both K-1 and K-2 start with the family. Our first 2 units start with K-1 are entitled Family and Friends, respectively, and we've written a guide to the first 3 weeks of school, Setups for Success, which we provide teachers with pointers on creating strong partnerships with families. In kindergarten 2, we start our first unit on Our Community, and later in the year, the mayor asked children to envision and create as a class a project that would make Boston a fairer and more interesting place for children. The project culminates in a celebration with families at the bowling building, including the superintendent and the mayor's staff. And the projects are amazing, actually. It's a lot of fun to see how a team of kindergartners can come up with really fascinating projects, and the families are proud and the superintendent is inspired. So it's really a special time for all of us to see how brilliant our kindergarten children can be. We also have developed something called Home Links. These are tools designed to connect the families to our curriculum, our K-1 and our K-2 curriculum. And the idea behind them is what the kids are actually learning in the classroom comes home with the kids, and that there's ways for parents and teachers to talk about what the students are learning in the curriculum. Before it was more like homework, but this is much more connection to the curriculum itself. In the Office of Engagement, Countdown to Kindergarten, now Sonia is here, so you can ask her. Countdown to Kindergarten engages families, educators, and the community in a citywide effort to enhance early learning opportunities and to support successful transition to kindergarten. Programs start from birth that include the Talk, Read, Play campaign, otherwise known as the Blue T-shirts. Play to Learn groups, which are weekly structured play times for parents and their 1 to 3-year-olds in the Boston Public Schools, and various kindergarten transition activities. I'm sure you've seen hundreds of incoming kindergarten at our annual kindergarten celebration, otherwise known as the Yellow Shirts, at the Children's Museum. But we have celebrations at neighborhood library branches throughout the city, as well as welcome and preview sessions for the Boston Public Schools. Additionally, we've made strides towards Mayor Walsh's goal of a universal citywide mixed delivery system for Boston's 4-year-old children. In 2002, we launched the Boston Kids program, working to provide 14 community-based pre-K programs with the Boston Public Schools, coaching and professional development, as well as teacher stipends. In this way, more students would be entering BPS having the same pre-K foundation. So the idea is to align what's going on in community-based programs with that which is going on in the public schools. This effort ultimately paved the way for a federal preschool expansion grant, of which Boston has received, I think it's $16 million? $16 million to fund programs, which Tiara is now going to tell you about. So this is Tiara Dias. She is the manager of the Boston Preschool Expansion Grant.
And if it's okay with you, I'm going to direct my comments
Here.
to the very cute baby over there, as compared to the camera. Makes it a lot easier. As Jason mentioned, my name is Tiara Dias, and I am the Preschool Expansion Grant Project Manager for Boston Public Schools. In 2014, the United States Department of Education launched the Preschool Development Grant to support states in building and enhancing high-quality preschool programs. Massachusetts was one of the 18 states chosen for the grant. It also included 5 communities, including Boston, and that was Holyoke, Springfield, Lawrence, and Lowell. The PEG grant, also known as the Preschool Expansion Grant, is a partnership between BPS, the early education and care, and we currently have 15 community-based programs that we work with. We support families whose income fall below the federal poverty guideline by providing them with full-year, full-day, high-quality preschool. We used our Boston Kids model as a starting point, and then PEG further increased the quality by considering things like teacher salary, comparably to the starting rate of BPS teachers, as well as the paraprofessional scale. It also included comprehensive services such as nutrition, medical, vision, dental, and mental services. As far as transition activities, PEG includes increasing family engagement strategies. We look to improve the BPS registration, the communication between the BPS and the community-based programs, and also working with teachers and center directors to participate in PD along the lines with our BPS teachers. And we also ensure that students come into BPS with the same knowledge base regardless of what their previous experience is. Currently, we're starting year 3 out of 4 years, and we're examining student outcomes as well as instructional measures as part of our statewide evaluation. We also have specific goals related to family engagement and transitional support. The goal would be to really look at how we're supporting families from the minute they enter our early learning programs until they transition into our K-2 classrooms with Boston Public Schools. We work very closely with the Welcome Center, the Countdown for Kindergarten, as well as CFCE, which is the Boston Coordinated Family and Community Engagement, to support families. And finally, as we move towards the Mayor's Initiative for Universal Pre-K, we hope to continue these efforts to outreach and meet many families to outreach to meet our families where they are and to ensure that students' outcomes are met, as well as preparing children for their kindergarten success. For you as well.
Great. And I know, Sonia, I don't think you have an opening statement, or do you have anything you'd initially like to share?
But I'm happy to talk about what we do.
Sure, if you'd like, and if you'd move the microphone over. Thank you.
So
we added Sonia to the panel last minute because of her role with Countdown. She should have been anyway.
And she comes with a speech.
Yes. So what we do to support families in the transition to kindergarten, our program is 3-tier. We have the talk, replay, we have play to learn groups, but then I'm just going to focus on the transition piece. And we start our transition piece now in the fall. So we start now in October, where we send out letters to providers about the transition process dates, important dates for families to consider, to register for the Boston Public Schools, but also to come and visit our schools during school preview time and showcase of schools. So that part is done early on in October. We have a website with information that really walks families through 5 steps from the information piece, gathering information piece, to the registration piece, to then welcoming families into the Boston Public Schools, to then we go into party mode with our families now in June. So for providers, we have a toolkit that walks families, and this is mainly for daycare or in-home providers, and it walks families through the process of registering for the Boston Public Schools and important dates to keep in mind and to keep their families informed of what's happening and what they need to do each month. So it's a month-by-month based little calendar that providers can just look at and give that information to families. We work with the Boston Public Schools and our welcome services to make sure that there's school preview time. It's a program that started with the Boston Public Schools, but as we expanded to add middle and high school, we moved that program to the welcome services. But we still support in making sure that families get the information about when they need to go visit schools, what days are available. We also support the welcome services with the Showcase in Schools, also a program that started with with Countdown to Kindergarten, but because we expanded for the middle and high school, we then moved it to welcome services. From there, we support the registration centers in the month of January just to make sure that they have additional support in helping families register. We understand the process, we understand how it works, and we go out, we meet with providers and we offer about 30 different information sessions for childcare providers that invite us to come into their centers to talk about the registration process in smaller environments for their families. We then move on to welcoming families into the Boston Public Schools. We have an e-newsletter that talks about what's the process, what's happening, a very active Facebook page. We're starting to move into our Twitter page to just inform families. And then once we work with all the schools so that they can host welcome sessions in the school. And the importance of the welcome session is not only that the families come in and visit their new schools, but sometimes it's not the first choice or second choice for the families. So we want them to come in and to see, and we want the schools to welcome families, and we want families, once they come in and visit this school, that they want to stay. So we provide the schools with a toolkit in terms of what to do and what to give to families and how to receive families, although they do that very well, but we want to make sure that there's additional information in there. We have gifts for families. We have a registration gift bag that we give a book, and we give a calendar, and we give all these different activities. Throughout the summer, we work with the public libraries. They're the ones that hand out our yellow t-shirt, I'm going to kindergarten, and the idea, we send out a welcome card to family and then a t-shirt card. And we want families to come into the libraries to sign up for a library card, but also to pick up their I'm going to kindergarten t-shirt. And then from there, we have a summer guide with activities, transition activities. So free visits to the Children's Museum and the Science Museum, information about the Fun Fridays, information about first day of school. So we're walking families through the entire process throughout the year. We have about direct contact with families just by mail, 5 of those that are direct information that goes to the address. Before families come in to register, we don't have that. So one of the things that families, when we ask them if they didn't register in first round, why didn't you register in first round? One of the things that they say is that, how can we get information to you? And they want direct mail to the house, but we don't have their address before they come in and register. So we use libraries, community centers, health centers, our providers to make sure that we're sending out information. And then we end with just our party mode where we do community celebrations. We have about 22 in different communities in the city where we invite all the new kindergartners, usually principals come, and we just have a little party at the library for the kids, and we give information to parents. And then the large celebration at the Boston Children's Museum, and we culminate, which we did this past Monday, with the getting volunteers and welcoming families into. So each school received 1 or 2 volunteers to support in that transition, welcome families into the schools. Every single kindergarten teacher gets a welcome to kindergarten t-shirt, and principals. So there's a lot of information. The kids tie in their yellow with yellow, and they tie it in with fun moments in the summer. And we hope we're now moving on to welcoming the next group of families.
That's great. Thank you very much. Can you remind me, Jason, you mentioned in 2015 when pre-K was first launched, there was 750 4-year-olds?
So in 2005.
2005, I'm sorry.
Yeah. And now we're about 2,800 K1 students. And for reference, it's about 4,500 K2 students. So if we maxed out at universal preschool, meaning we made it available to everybody, we would assume roughly 4,500 people would use it, because that's how many people use kindergarten.
So can you just tell me about those grade levels? Because I know we have K2, K1. Do we have
Sure.
K0 programming?
Yeah, so K0 is 3-year-olds, K1 is 4-year-olds, and K2 is 5-year-olds. And this was actually done because of union. Basically, teachers wanted to be recognized on the same pay scale, the same everything, so they called it K. One thing you can do maybe in your power is to turn it into K3s, 4, and 5, so at least it matches the age, because we've always said if we serve 2-year-olds, we'd be serving negative children, and that wouldn't work. So we were thinking one thing would make K3, 4, and 5 would make a lot more sense.
Is there a goal to serve 2-year-olds?
I don't think so, but in play-to-learn groups, for example, we do. And generally, in Massachusetts, it's early intervention deals with kids until they become 3. At 3, they become a public school, and that's why we're mostly serving 3-year-olds. But who knows, the law could change, and then we should. But I think it just would make more sense to families to make it at least K3, K4, and K5 to match the age of the children.
And then tell me how many 3-year-olds we have.
So we're serving roughly 400 3-year-olds. And that's why when you hear a classroom where it's called a K0, K1, most of the time it's a inclusion classroom
hybrid.
because it's our responsibility to serve the 3-year-olds in inclusion classrooms. So they'll have generally 4-year-old peers, not 3-year-old peers, though we do have some 3-year-old regular ed spots. They're very limited.
And how many 3-year-old regular ed spots do we have?
That's what I'm saying, we have like 200 or 300. Not,
200 or 300,
yeah,
sorry.
not a lot. So
200 to 300, so
Yeah,
then
little
there's
less.
100.
It's a little less for 3-year-olds because it's in the one of the EECs, and
There's a couple of seats, but yeah, it's about, I think it's like 180 seats.
yeah, so around 200. So 180 seats for 3-year-olds.
Okay.
Regular ed.
And
then the
then-
rest, it's inclusion classrooms. That's why we started with 750 because it's a moving universe because it depends on the number of students who are on IEPs that then need peers.
Right.
So that's why it's generally between 450 and 750 that we have. But I think Sonia's saying that for 3-year-old regular eds, we have no more than 200 spaces for them. That's why it's the hardest seat to get.
Right.
And then the 4-year-olds are harder, and then obviously 5-year-olds we have to provide.
And I would say it's not sort of related to this conversation, but I think that's part of why we lose kids to other types of schools.
Sure.
Because we don't have that many seats. Are those the K0, K1, K2? Can you talk just quickly about the time the kids have in school? Are they all full-day programs?
No,
or-
they're not. They're the same as the public school kindergarten, first grade, second grade. So they're a 6-hour day.
Oh, so it's a full
Yeah,
day?
so full day in that sense. In the community-based word, a full day is 8 hours.
Right,
8 to
right.
10 hours, and
It's
it's
a
12
full
months a year.
school day.
It's a full school day. Yeah, it's not these half-day programs. In 2005, they removed those, and we moved completely into
To a
the
full
same
school
as
day.
kindergarten, yeah.
And then when I think about the terms that we're using, we often use preschool and daycare, and we
Yes.
use those words in early ed.
Yeah.
What is the
So
the
it's-
correct terminology and for what?
So it's interesting. I mean, the field has evolved, so the name keeps changing. But in Massachusetts, the licensing standards for preschool programs is 2.9 months to 4.11, and so that's when you hear preschool. For the Boston Public Schools, we go by your birth of September 1st, and then if you're a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old, or a 5-year-old by September 1st, then you're either K0, K1, or K2. So they're two different systems. That's why BPS really talks about K1, K2, et cetera.
But are we referring to it as preschool, early ed?
So we, in Boston Public Schools, call it K1. That's what
We just call it K1?
We call it K1, K2, too, but the world knows it as preschool, so that's why often it will be interchangeable. And if you want to make it available to families, then, if, for example, we move into a mixed delivery system and they're using a community-based program, that community-based program will probably use the term preschool. They're not going to use K1. But over time, all of us could be thinking of programs for 4-year-olds that are both in community-based programs and in the public schools, and those would all be called K1 at some point.
We're getting away from the term daycare,
Yeah, I think,
because there is so much
this is again,
education.
the evolution of the field is that it's really instructional time, and while obviously families need care, and families, I mean, there's a social emotional component sort of connotated with the word care. I think the whole notion of instruction and education that has social emotional component in it is all kind of moving into education. So I think everything's just evolving.
Yes.
Yeah, and we just, I mean-
And since we've named this sort of policy series,
Yeah.
I've had some feedback, I'm sure Michelle's received as well as Anna and Andrea, on the term daycare versus
Yeah, I mean,
early ed or preschool.
Exactly. I mean, we really are talking about early education at this
Yes.
point, but
Right.
early education that has a social emotional side to it and a family component and a sort of comprehensive services, knowing that young children really can't be separated out from the family's needs. And so, again, I think you're just looking at two worlds coming together. The health and human services, you're used to support the daycare world, and public education is getting more involved in preschool, and so that's what you're seeing as those two ideas.
And then, could you talk a little bit about how the district is communicating with some of the privately or independently run
Yeah.
early ed or daycare programming?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we do it in multiple ways. One way is what Sonia is talking about, which is we really want to go into community-based programs and share the information with families so that they know how to enter in to the public schools to make the transition, to make choices. Our goal is every family to make choices in the first round, right? So that's sort of how Countdown would measure its success, is people getting the choices they want, or at least trying to get into the choices. Then there is this whole notion of instruction and changing the way young children experience their early educational experience. And so our work with the Preschool Expansion Grant, and I think the mayor's goal with a mixed delivery system, is going to be to make community-based programs very similar to the public school experience, with also holding on to comprehensive services and the strong social emotional component. So we're trying to really work with providers. And so right now the Preschool Expansion Grant is in 14 schools or community-based programs, but the idea was that we would make it available to many more as money comes down, and the mayor has a request to the legislature to fund this from the convention funds. So if that happens, then that'll be the money. If not, money will have to come from someplace else.
And then I'm amazed that we aren't able to identify in the city of Boston where the, I guess, the 2-year-olds are, or the 3-year-olds are.
So
We can't identify those households to mail them a postcard that says, it's time to get ready.
We just don't have access to families' information until they register for the Boston Public Schools. So what we try to do is go through other means, like the public libraries. We go to health centers through our preschools in the area, just to try to get the information out there. Community-based agencies and services, our community centers, to try to get the information out there. But we don't have addresses to do a direct mail. One of the things that we've talked about for a long time is, like, how they do the leaf, picking up the leaf, and we would love one of those for, this is the time to register and the information for families, but we haven't gotten to that point yet.
I just think of all the retailers that know they follow my shopping habits. They know exactly how old everyone in my household is and what our shopping patterns are. I'm sure Target or Walmart or anyone could identify if there was a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old in my house.
No, I mean, honestly, I'm still miffed because on the first day of kindergarten, I will go into classrooms and a kindergarten child will not know their last name.
Yes.
And we're scrambling to find them on the list. So just that gap of communication between families and the school districts, there's so much room for improvement in this area. There's that FedEx commercial. We're like, what would it be if the FedEx ran the public schools, and it's the logistics of families and schools could be improved.
Thank you for that. Councilor Wu.
Thank you. I have a bunch of questions, but I guess one bucket was on that same issue. I mean, why not look at the birth certificates that are already being recorded in City Hall here? You list your home address on those birth certificates also, and like they might move away in the 2 years since the baby came, but send them a postcard right away and say, hey, we're waiting for you in 2 years. Here's the link where you'll need to go to register, or ask them to register right then. And you might get some extra people in there that won't be living in Boston by the time, but at least you're catching all the babies born in the city.
Yeah. So we, at one point, a number of years ago, we used to put in the birth certificate, a talk, replay little palm card, where it had information about resources for families. As things move, it's different connections, and it's not knowing where to go in terms of the process, but we would love to do that. I mean, that is a simple palm card that we can put in there, and we can design in a minute and get it to you guys if you have the power to get it in there, or at least give me the contact. That would be something that we can do.
I mean, let's do a little thing. I wonder how many babies that is. It's probably not that much of a cost to send a postcard to every baby born in Boston with a Boston address, and just see if that ends up affecting anything. Okay,
it's going down as a good idea.
Okay,
We're all like, yeah, okay.
So, okay, so back to my bigger picture question. So we keep using this term mixed delivery system for universal pre-K. What exactly does that mean?
So in 2005, basically, the mayor and the superintendent then decided that they wanted to do all the K-1s in the public schools. This had a tremendous effect on community-based programs because they serve preschool families. And preschool was basically the only way they could afford running infant and toddler programs because the ratios are higher in preschool programs. So when Boston Public School comes along and says, hey, we're going to offer universal and free preschool programs, and not only are we going to offer it, it's tied to whether or not you're going to get into this school forevermore. Many families rush to use the Boston Public Schools, which is not a bad thing. Right? That's a good thing. It increased the popularity of the Boston Public Schools. It actually increased the outcomes of students. It was a win, but it was destabilizing the community-based programs. So the thought being over the last couple of years with Mayor Walsh is to develop what we're calling a mixed delivery system, and that is for some providers who meet the quality threshold, who have teachers with higher level degrees who will take our coaching and use our curriculum and partner with us. We will develop K-1s in community-based programs. And so when we say mixed delivery system, the idea is that so you could go to the Daniel Marr or you could go to a Head Start and it will feed into a BPS K program, K to 12, and the two will be linked. So it's like a deputized almost school within a community-based program that offers 10-hour days, 12 months of the year, so that if families have to work, they're not penalized for choosing a community-based program. That's the idea behind a mixed delivery system.
And would there be a standardized curriculum?
Yes, there would be. So the idea would be that it would be seamless which one you chose. It's just that if you had a working need or you actually chose to be in a community-based program because you were there from infancy, right? Because some of these families are using it from infants all the way through till they go to the public schools. This would build a tighter relationship, both in curriculum but then in the transition, so that we wouldn't ask them to come. They would actually be part of the BPS already, and that they would say, okay, if I'm going to this community-based program, I've been accepted in this school already.
So it's content-based, communications-based, but not compensation-based. Do they get any subsidy?
Well, so that's what the preschool expansion, you asked really good questions. Yes. So that's what the preschool expansion grant is basically it's a federal grant that says teachers get the same starting salary. And so they start at $53,000 because in community-based programs, they make about $35,000 a year. So the idea here is that it would give them some comparable pay, and that would help stabilize the staff, which would then help us do professional development. And so it's been this reciprocal program. And to be honest, it works in some programs and it doesn't in others. And so that's why we will, as we design the mixed delivery system, we'll figure out all those bumps along the way.
So the 2,800 seats is that including all the
No.
Okay.
That's
so
all just the public
BPS.
schools. There's 300, right? 300 in community-based programs that are not currently called K-1s, but we are actually interested in developing a pilot and so that they will feed. And so this month we'll be discussing whether or not we can pull off a pilot for next year. That's the goal.
And what's the ultimate goal in terms of the breakdown between, like, let's say we're aiming for 4,500 universal coverage, the breakdown between BPS-based and community?
So that's going to be dependent on a couple of things. So one is there's this Build Boston initiative right now where we're thinking about how do we want to configure the public schools. So that's one piece to that. Right now we're pretty stuffed. Like we can't really open that many more K-1s. We can, but it takes a lot of work for us to find a suitable K-1. So there's the Build Boston effort. And then I think there's this mixed delivery question where we're pushing to see how many providers really can perform at the quality level that we want to make sure that it's comparable. So we've thrown out about 1,000 in each, but that's really, I think it'll depend on Build Boston and it'll depend on the work that we've been learning in the Preschool Expansion Grant.
Okay, and that's targeted to start this next year, some additional.
Yes, exactly. We're pushing for more of that. And again, when the mayor, is making this legislative ask, if that's going to fund it, then that'll start the process faster.
How much is the funding shortage right now to get to 4,500?
So it's anywhere between $20 and $30 million. But that number seems really intimidating to people. So we are trying to make it, okay, the ask is for $16 million, and so we'll grow. And it could be because the public school expands as well. So it really depends on how we do this.
Okay. And so just thinking about what it means for a child to be prepared when they enter K2, there's kind of the process piece. We talked about reaching all the parents and making sure they know how to register, they're in the first round, and then there's kind of how to get the kids themselves ready, like what do they need to, basic things they need to know, or social skills, or being used to a certain schedule. So for you said there's 5 to 10% that are coming in without any formal program?
Yeah, so, I mean,
how do we help?
So K1 really is designed to take kids who've had no formal schooling. But what we found is that 70 to 90% of the kids are already in some kind of formalized schooling. And so the skills that we're asking families to provide are just things that happen naturally. But the more time they're spending in a formalized structure, obviously self-regulation, being able to not just to participate in a group, to make eye contact, but they don't have to spell their name or anything like that. It's just more the social skills to learn that they're valued, so that when they come to school, they're not quiet. They actually get to ask questions, and we want them to ask questions. And then what I think happens in the classroom curriculum are spaces for them to develop those self-regulation skills, and what we call also executive functioning, which is actually thinking about thinking. So, for example, one of the activities that we do in the classroom is called thinking and feedback. So let's say Sonia and Tiara over there designing some interesting block project, then we will actually ask them to come back to the group, and the group will then have to have the skills to say, oh, I noticed you guys put blocks together this way, and I noticed you made big structures. And then they actually get to say what they did. Well, we were making a big structure because we wanted to build something 10 feet in the air, and we didn't know if we could pull it off. And then after they explain what to do, the children give them feedback and suggestions on how to improve that. So you can see that's a skill of what we would call thinking and feedback, and that's a skill that we want kids to learn. But in order to do that, they're going to have to sit, pay attention, observe, and then offer suggestions. So that's one example. Another one is we do storytelling, story acting, where kids are telling stories and we're scribing them, and they have to act them out. So again, you can see the social skills that are going to be required to interact. And then the reading and writing and the skills you need for reading and writing, we definitely spend a lot of time in literacy centers and doing a lot of reading to support that. So basically, if you love them and get them there consistently, they're going to learn, because that's what the brain's designed to do. So that's all we require.
And at what age, I don't know, maybe this is getting into kind of medical or science question, but at what age do you see results from having a curriculum with care?
So again, that's something we are finding, that children who experience a strong K1 experience will do better all the way at the MCAS. So we're finding that this is actually a critical age, because what's happening is, so imagine the brain. The brain has got all these extra connections so that you could learn in Guam, you could learn in, I'll say North Korea, you could learn in the White House, right? Or like wherever you are, you can learn a language and you can interact within that culture. And then what happens is, as you become 2, 3, 4, your brain actually starts parsing down information and you become specified. And so the idea of schooling at this age is to them to learn those skills, but a lot of the skills that you're learning are in human interactions, and so you need to learn how to elicit information from adults, and adults need to be paying a lot of attention to you, and you have to create the time and space in the curriculum. And so what we're finding is that curriculum designed in this specific way, with math, with literacy skills, vocabulary is really a huge engine behind this, at age 3 and 4 is critical. And so that's why we're taking the time to work in community-based programs. That's why BPS is making such an investment in programs for 4-year-olds. And then as the field evolves, what we learned was in kindergarten, they were teaching this all over again. So kids would get this at 3 and 4, and then in kindergarten they get the same thing. And so the effects of 3 and 4-year-old programming washed out, basically. And so we've changed kindergarten in the Boston Public Schools, and then actually we're looking at changing 1st and 2nd grade curriculum. So now it's much more aligned to take advantage of the early investment.
And are you finding any specific patterns about the kids who are not in any formal program beforehand? Like,
they're not doing as well. And they're not doing as well for a whole host of reasons. Often it's just families who are the most disenfranchised, the ones who have the most toxic stress, But the other thing is, we actually created a summer program that identified families who had no preschool experience, and they spend 6 weeks with 2 master level teachers. And so that's a program that we would love to continue. There's actually, the Target Foundation gave us money for that one, but we use our Title I funding. And so we do actually summer programming for preschool, kindergarten, first and second grade to help mitigate some of that stuff. But we should do more of it.
Okay. What else sort of keeps you all up at night? What do you worry about as thinking about kindergarten?
I mean, I'm talking, there's plenty that keeps me up, so.
No, pretty much covered everything.
Do you want to, what keeps you up?
Yeah, for me is really getting families getting their choice, and it's something that we can't control because of the number of seats in each individual school. So the frustration in families, we feel it too, that we can't just give the seat that they want. But one of the things that through early childhood's work is that every single program is designed to do what Jason has been talked about. So we hope that when families do accept a seat, that they experience what they feel is in those highly talked about schools, that they also get it in the schools that they think are just, whatever they think that they are. But, that's the thing, just making sure that every single program that the families, once they come into our schools, they feel like they're getting the services and that the kids are getting what we have told them that they were going to get once they enter our schools.
Will the community-based seats be part of the lottery when they come online?
Well, so that would be the idea. It would be, okay, so you go to community-based program X and it's part of the Mather School. So you would just go there, and then you would have a pathway that says when you're in K2, you'll go there. So the challenge and the opportunity is thinking about aligning the community-based program with a public school that has both the space and popularity or non-popularity, and we have to think about it. But the good news is, like, kids in strong early care and education programs will actually enhance the quality of the public school. And that peers spend a lot of time learning from one another, so the stronger the child's educational experience is early, the better it is for everybody. And we've also found that mixed income classrooms also increase the educational outcomes for students, so the degree to which we can create attractive schools for everybody that are high quality, we're all going to benefit from it.
You good? Do you find that communicating with some of the privately run early ed programs or daycare programs challenging?
Yes, on multiple levels.
For Countdown, yes, and mainly for the reason that 4-year-olds, it's hard to get the information to families early when they invite us. They invite us to talk to the aging out students, which is okay for Countdown, but for families then feel like they didn't get the information. But we can only go in and do the information for the families that they allow us to. So that's why we have other information sessions throughout the city so that we can give information to families in different areas. But it is challenging. It is hard because they're losing business, and we want to make sure that we keep great partnerships with them. We want all the kids and the families to be informed to make the best choices.
There is competition for those,
Yes.
the K0, the K1 seats,
Yes.
and that sort of marketplace that exists is a barrier for more kids getting into BPS. And you mentioned earlier so the Catholic and the charter school programs being their competitors.
Yes. I mean, that's the problem. I mean, in an ideal world, everybody would put the child first and the information first, but because of some of these competitive issues, it is what it is. But ultimately, everybody should, a child should not suffer any academic consequences for choices families make. We should just assure, as a city, that all kids have a really strong experience, because in the end, they may bounce from one program to another, they may go through transitions, so we're all interdependent on one another, and we just have to create a greater city view of all families and all children that are born here.
And then talk a little bit about the wait lists and what families are experiencing that do want to come into BPS, again, K0, K1.
Yeah, do you want to?
So the wait list is hard. There is some changes this year in terms of only one school selection, at the end of June. But what happens is that families come in, they put in their list of school choices. If they don't get into their first choice school, then they have an option. They'll be on 3 wait lists, and then by June, they select one school that they want to be on the wait list. What we advise families is to select the wait list number that is the lowest one, but that is up to the family. Sometimes they still, they're 75 at this one school, and they want to be 75 at that one school, which means that 75 kids have to leave so that they can get a seat. So that process is complicated. We try to inform families of what options, what schools still have seats or have lower wait list numbers so that they can come in and select those schools. But the process is at this point, 8 days into the kindergarten day is when, if a student did not show up, we can give out the seat. So at that point, they look into where are the seats available and start calling families for the wait list, which also poses some issues for the preschool programs, because now you're pulling kids out of their program. So yes, there's some issues in that, but at that time, we can't give the seat until 8 days in. At 8 days in, then that's when you can start calling families and letting them know, there's a seat available, and if they want it. They have a turnaround time that they should call back and accept the seat.
Now I understand the do not report list. Are we asking families that don't report to school why they aren't reporting for their seats?
So there's a couple of reasons that we know. Families got a seat in March. At the same time, they were applying for charter school, for Medco, for whatever other program that they were still thinking on. They haven't made their choice until the start of school, and they didn't let us know. Welcome Services calls every families to ask them whether they're going to take the seat or not, so that we can avoid waiting until this time to call the families in the wait list. So the families.
So you preemptively call every family before school starts?
Yes, they call families, yeah, and find out whether they're taking the seat. So the ones they send out, the ones that didn't return the form. So there's the form where it says you have been assigned to this school. Are you going to take the seat? Yes. You don't want the seat, but you want to stay in the wait list? They check that off, and then from there they call the families to find out whether they're taking the seat or not. So if families do not tell us, there's a lot of different wrong numbers. Even though they register in January, by March, there's a lot of wrong numbers. So if the families do not tell us, we have to wait until this point, till the 8 days, yeah.
So would you I think this will be a good opportunity to promote some of the programming, but I think there are 3, there's yellow shirts, blue shirts, and there's another program. Will you just describe those 3 opportunities for families to connect with BPS?
So for Countdown, we have a Talk, Read, Play campaign, and this is just information. It's just a campaign where one day in April, the week of the young child, we take the city by storm. We do a flash mob. We work with all the providers in the city. Last year we had about 1,800 families participate in the event, and it's just talking, singing, and playing. It's between 11 and 11:30 anywhere in the city that we're hosting one of these events. Everybody's out there in public with these blue shirts just talking. And then we have palm cards that we give to families and health centers and libraries and everywhere in the city to talk about the importance of talking, reading, and playing with your kid, and with activities. And the activities are geared towards self-regulation, just to make sure we're still driving that point. And it's a birth to 2 and then a 3 to 5 in terms of the palm cards. And we have that in 8 different languages to give out to families. Then we have our Play to Learn groups, and those are hosted mainly in our Boston Public Schools. We have about 40 different play groups happening in a week at different times in the week. week. We also have in community centers, health centers, and public libraries where families can come in. It's for an hour and a half, and the room is set up similar to a preschool where there are centers, and we want to give that opportunity for kids to learn how to transition, how to listen to an adult and to other kids, how to sit in a circle, how to share. And there's literacy piece in there also, and that it's free for families. We have about 700 families who participate in a year, and they do stay for the entire year, and sometimes for multiple years. So they come in, it starts next Monday. You guys are welcome to come in and see one in action, but they come in they start on Monday, and they'll set up a time. So if you do Monday morning from 9 to 12, from 9 to 11 or 9 to 10:30, that is your session. And it builds community with parents. They share information of what's happening, and they also learn about the Boston Public Schools, and they also are in a school building and see the school as a resource, which is the idea.
How are those promoted?
So we do through Facebook, we do through community centers, we work with early intervention, we work with WIC offices, with the Department of Transitional Assistance, so we have the information out there, and at this point is word of mouth. Right? We have a wait list wait lists are not a good word, but we still have a wait list for some of these playgroups because we only have 40, and we have in about 12 different locations.
That's fascinating. I didn't realize there were that many of them. I knew the playgroups existed,
Yes.
but I didn't realize there were 40 of them.
Yeah.
And then my last question is, I think this is more of an opportunity to really support the work that happens in our kindergarten classrooms, but what's the one thing that you want families to do with their children at home to prepare them for school?
So that's why we've created Home Links, and so it's to do the Home Link activities. So like in kindergarten 2, they're dissecting owl pellets, for example. So they're going through and seeing what owls eat, and so it'd be really interesting to go home and be able to say, hey, I noticed you work on owl pellets. Here are some things about owls that I might know or that we could research together. So the idea is that we're giving families what's going on in real time in children's lives, and so that they can have those conversations. Because again, the goals are around interaction, discussion, vocabulary building. Because for young children, conceptual development is created through vocabulary and in discussions. And so the idea of creating activities that are both engaging to the children and relevant to what the children are learning, but that the adults can participate in. So as we get this Home Links more and more launched, just getting families engaged in it and putting the spirit in the teachers. 2 years ago, every year we have a kindergarten conference. We really spend time working with kindergarten teachers to see families as strength and as partners in this, and not as like, okay, they come into my space and I don't have to talk to families, but that actually families do really think about their kids a lot and know a lot about their kids, so really creating more opportunities in that space. And so we're trying to do that, and Home Links was our attempt also to expand that.
Anything else to add, Sonia or Tiara?
No, I just would touch a little bit more on the family engagement from the community-based level, and just going back to the idea of supporting transitions. The community-based probably have the first contact with families, and so it is a great opportunity, as you mentioned, to connect with them around what the public school K-2 is going to feel like. And so through our Preschool Expansion grant, we've been really able to use things like a newsletter to help programs create family timelines that look at everything from when they start in September to when the first round of registration will be, and what kind of paperwork they may need to collect, and what time they need to be there, and what sibling priority means. Just really helping them get familiar with some of the paperwork that would be required for Boston Public Schools, but also how to become an advocate for their child, and really how to speak up when it comes to things like assessments, additional services, visiting their child's school, and making sure that that bridge feels really smooth as much as possible. That's really where the grant, I think, has helped.
Well, any assistance that you need with the social media piece or spreading the word, I know that my office would be happy to do that. I'm sure many of us would do it.
Yeah.
Great.
I think we're good. Anything else?
No, thank you.
Great. So I'm going to adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you.